Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with the Tuesday edition of Today in Sports Betting. I am joined for the college portion, as always, by my partner in crime there from the snowy climes of New York City. It is Scott Reichel. Actually, Scott's out on the island. That's saying he's in New York City is something that the rest of the country would say. But I know, Scott, if you're local, we would never say you're in the city, correct?
Something like that. I mean, usually for convenience in college, I just said I'm about 40 minutes out from the city, and nobody would give me any follow-up questions. That's usually how I got around it. Nice. But, yeah, something like that.
All right, very good. And you guys, you said you got about 5 inches last night. So
I know the city got hit worse, but, no, overall it wasn't too terrible. Then again, I was inside all day, so it's not like it really impacted me. But
as long as your power and cable doesn't go out, dude, it's all good, right?
That's the thing, yeah.
All right. So, Scott, we've got a few interesting games tonight in the college ranks, but we have one really important game, and it's going to be in the Big 12, my friend, as one of the teams that you and I have identified as virtually unbeatable, the Baylor Bears, is heading up, going to take up the game against the Texas Longhorns down there in Austin. Texas is going to get their coach back and everything. So, yeah. Baylor's a 5.5-point favorite. Total in this one's 144.5. Scott, do you get the feeling if Baylor's going to lose this season at least before the Big 12 tournament, that this is going to be the game?
It kind of feels that way. Then again, you don't really know about the conference tournament, so there's always some extra tough games that you might have to face that, playing that many games and that many nights usually tends to add up to some teams. But for the most part, I think you got to assume so. I mean, you're going through the actual schedule here. And looking at Baylor, I guess you have at Oklahoma, which I think could be a potential trap game there because I think Oklahoma is actually very good. Texas Tech at home, I think they'll beat West Virginia on the road. I don't think West Virginia is very good. I mean, Morgantown's Morgantown. But for the most part, yeah, I think it's this game and the Oklahoma game that's circled. Of course, Texas Tech can maybe sneak up on them, but I'm not the biggest fan of this Texas Tech team. So, for example, Texas Tech won yesterday. Mm-hmm. I was more impressed with Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Because, Oklahoma was missing its best player.
Right.
So, yeah, I think Baylor personally is going to end up either running the table or losing one game. So, we'll see what happens.
Okay. This is a Texas team that struggled a little bit lately. They've lost to a couple of the teams you mentioned. They lost to Texas Tech, and they lost to Oklahoma by 1 at home. Of course, that was without Shaka Smart on the bench. Failed to cover their last 3, while Baylor just keeps on winning. They're not they're a good cover team, Scott. They've kind of slipped a little bit lately as they've failed to cover what I thought was a ridiculous number against Kansas, 10.5, and they win that one by 8. And then they 14-point favorites against Auburn and win by 12. So they ain't missing the number much. It's not like those games are close. So what do you think happens in this one?
Oh, I'm not going against Baylor. I'll tell you that much. Do I think Texas will put together a better performance with its key players back and its coach? Yes, but I already saw Texas in some step-up games this season. Lost to Villanova at home. Lost to Texas Tech at home. I'm not picking them to beat Baylor. I'll tell you that much. I think Baylor is ridiculous. I've been saying since the first week of the season that Baylor and Gonzaga and Baylor in order are the best 2 teams in the country. And nothing has really changed my stance. In fact, I think my stance even got stronger.
Yeah.
In the course of the season. These 2 teams are the best teams, and Texas is good, don't get me wrong, but they've had opportunities for some big marquee wins, and their biggest win of the season, of course, was against Kansas. You also had that come-from-behind win where they beat West Virginia in a game they probably should have lost in Morgantown, but they won. But, I mean, you lose Texas Tech at home, you lose to Villanova at home. I can't pick you to beat Baylor here. I got to go with Baylor.
Yeah, I'm the same way. This is a Texas team. A couple of troubling things on the horizon other than games you talked about. They beat Iowa State by 6, and that's just a terrible Iowa State team.
It was also right before their trip to Morgantown. It was a sandwich game between Kansas and West Virginia. So I factor in spots and stuff like that. At the end of the day, they won the game. You had a couple of other spots, though, where Texas looks good, but for a fringe top 10 team, top 5, no, top 10, they're a top 10 team. For a fringe top 5 team, I just think they're not as dominant as they should be. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. This is And this is a Baylor team for the most part. When you're counted on to run them out of the gym, that's exactly what they do. They covered a big number against K-State, covered a big number against Oklahoma State, covered big numbers against TCU, Oklahoma. So this is a very, very good, very good basketball team. It may be closer than we think, Scott. I probably wouldn't give this a 5-star ranking. Texas, could sneak in late.
Well, what do you think the spread should be in this game?
I think 5.5. I think 5.5 is a good number. If anything, you might shade it up towards the 6.5 range.
I was thinking 6.5, 7.
But I think 5.5 is pretty darn close. It's. I think there's a little bit of value at 5.5. It wouldn't stun me to see Texas cover the number. It would stun me to see Texas get the win.
Yeah, I just think Baylor is significantly better than Texas. Plus, you also have to wonder, with all the people back from COVID protocols and everything, is it going to take them a serious amount of time to get reacclimated? What's the story with their rotation, stuff like that? Just because you have some people playing who missed the previous game doesn't mean they're going to be playing it as well as they normally do.
Well, and that's we get the catch-all COVID protocols, but for the most part, because of HIPAA regulations which are even stronger in the college ranks, we don't get the full information about whether they actually had COVID or not. And to further delineate if they had it, what kind of symptoms do they have? Because it's one thing to test positive, obviously at 20. It's another thing to have the symptoms and then have to get back in shape. Obviously, you're going to take some wind power. You're not going to be able to work out for 3 weeks.
Well, that's why even if we're assuming they don't have the virus, if it's just solely based on close contact protocol, you still mess up your routine.
Sure.
Or you can't practice with your team for a couple days. So I'm curious if Sims and company will struggle a little bit to get going because they had an unexpected, about week vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Any thoughts on the total?
I'd go to the over. At the end of the day, I'm looking at these two teams, and I know there has been some money on the over. Over's 3-0 in Texas' last 3 games, 6-1 in the last 7, and Baylor's 4-0 to the over in its last 4 games. I see points. I think that this total being bet up makes a lot of sense to me. I'll lean to the over as well.
Yeah, I don't think this Texas defense is extremely good.
I think it was to start the year, but then it actually faced off against real competition.
Yeah.
And it's gotten, I don't want to say exposed, but it's definitely looked a lot weaker than it did earlier in the year.
Regress to the mean, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else you like tonight, Scott? There's a couple games with the good teams that are playing bad teams. One that I've got my eye on here is this Illinois-Indiana game. I know that's a rough spot for Illinois after coming off their big win. I think that number is a little short at -2. Any thoughts there?
I'd probably lean to Illinois, but this line movement does leave me scratching my head a little bit because I've seen Indiana play, and I don't think they're very good. I've seen Illinois play, and don't get me wrong, that team is streaky, but it's not as I'd say – I just think Illinois is more upside, and I think that's not even close because Indiana's probably not making the tournament. Or at least if it does, it'll barely squeak in. So
it's going to have to perform in the Big Ten tournament, I think, to pad their resume enough to make the tournament.
Yeah, I also think that both these teams have an equal look-ahead spot here. I know Illinois plays at home against Wisconsin in its next game, which is a big deal, but Indiana plays at home against Iowa in its next game. So I think those balance out. At the end of the day, I just think Illinois is the better team. So I'd lean Illinois. Am I going to play it? No. Maybe at half if I see something that, stands out to me. But right. I'm not going to jump the gun and play it before the opening tip.
Okay. What else you got? Anything else get your attention?
Well,
I haven't already made a video about.
Yeah, I have a play today on the Dayton and Duquesne game, so I have a thought on there. Looking at everything else, Maryland -2.5 I find interesting against Purdue. I had Purdue over the weekend against Minnesota. They ended up winning that game handily, but Purdue on the road 5-5, decent. I know Maryland 6-4, not a great overall team. However, I do find this line very, very fascinating because Maryland is favored in this game, and there has been a lot of money on Maryland, gone from -1 to -2.5. Stefanovic is still not going to be playing for Purdue, so keep that in mind. I know Maryland has very, very solid guards, so I do think that they will exploit Purdue's shorthanded backcourt. I'll lean Maryland there. It's mostly just based on the line move and what the line currently is. And one team I actually thought about taking as my play of the day but decided not to was Richmond. minus 10.5 against George Mason. These teams played about 2 weeks ago or so, and Richmond won that game on the road by 20. George Mason, not very good. Now, Richmond had that one slip against LaSalle, but overall, definitely an above average. I think they're a tournament team, but I just think Richmond's the much better team. I think at home, this team, speaking of good backcourts, Richmond is a very underrated backcourt. But I think Richmond will dominate. I think they'll probably win that game by 15. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that one. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the George Mason game or the Maryland-Purdue game. But
not the Maryland-Purdue. I do like Richmond in that spot. I think that's again, I like their guard combos, and that's why I start the later in the season, the more I start looking for those veteran guards. And
Richmond defensively is fantastic. Now, the main issue that you have with Richmond is the fact that this team can't rebound too well, but I don't think George Mason's a really good rebounding team either. So I think that balances out. And Richmond, after only giving up about 57 to George Mason in George Mason's home building, I think Mason will have some problems scoring in this one.
I think that's entirely possible. I'll tell you a team that I watched the other day, Scott, and we
I forgot to talk about our one of the most underrated matchups on the card today. Sorry to interrupt. You got Akron, Toledo.
We do.
I don't know if that's what you were going to be talking about, but I know we mentioned that in the weekend video that we did.
It wasn't, because I've got to play on that on my premium side. But
just saying, though, it's one of those games that we talked about, conferences that might be falling under the radar. We talked about a couple days ago how Toledo and Akron are probably the best two teams in the MAC. I still think Toledo's the best team in the conference, but that should be a very solid game as a nice litmus test for both teams. But anyway, what was the game you were about to talk about?
I was gonna. Now that you've said that, I want to get your thoughts on the line movement there, because that game opened at 7.5. Toledo by 7.5. Almost immediately within a couple hours down to 5.5. What are your thoughts about the line move of that game in general?
Well, for this one, I like the over. At the end of the day, I would probably lean to Toledo anyway, but Akron has been on fire lately. Now, Toledo's been on fire for the entire season, but Akron has won each of its last 6 games, and it has covered in each of those 6 games. So Akron seems to be hitting its stride. However, that's kind of why I'm laying off on the side. Plus, these games recently have been close. But looking at the total, it's gone from 148 to 150, even 150.5 in some spots. We know Toledo can score 80 or 90 on any given night. Akron, I think, will partake in an up-tempo style. I think you'll see a lot of points. I think one of these teams minimum will get to 80. So for that reason, I like the over in that spot.
Okay. Now, the game I was taking a look at.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you decided a total on that one, but
I've got a side. I'd lean to the over there too.
Yeah.
I was looking at the USC Stanford game, Scott. I watched this. We had Oregon State in a play against USC the other day that they just in a game they
blocked that from your memory.
Well, yeah, I know they just it was we took a bad beat on it, but I was impressed by this USC team. They are the biggest team in the country. They're the tallest team in Division I, and they just dominated inside and eventually, wore down the Beavers there. Catching 2 against or giving 2 against Stanford. What do you think about that one? You got any thoughts?
Well, I think that this game is definitely fascinating. I know Stanford has a ton of questionable players for this game.
Right.
Keep that in mind, because that could be why you have already seen some line movement on USC. USC has been very solid in conference play with the one exception of the Oregon State road slip-up from a couple weeks ago. However, it is worth mentioning USC has not covered in each of its last 4 games, even though it is 3-1 straight up. It has been, of course, laying at least 8.5 in each of those games. So this spread's a lot shorter than what USC is accustomed to facing, but it has definitely struggled to cover the number in the last, I'd say, 2 weeks or so. Now, Stanford.
Well, I'm going to take offense with that last one because according to my records, they definitely covered against Oregon State. According to my record.
According to your records, it did. According to the closing number, I see 13.5.
Yeah, 13.5 was the closing number, but if you got it at 13.5, good luck, because I don't know anybody that did. That number was a lot closer to 11 or 12.
Just saying what I see based on the closing number.
I understand.
Now, looking at Stanford, this team pretty much has, I'd say, a puncher's chance in the Pac-12. Do I think it's a great team? No. Do they have one really, really, really good player? Yes. That's basically all they have. If you want to actually go through the roster here, you got Oscar Da Silva, who, of course, is averaging 19.5 points, 7.3 rebounds. He's been very good. There's a lot of hype around Zaire Williams, who don't get me wrong, people keep track of and say, this guy's a freshman who might be a top 10 pick in the draft, stuff like that. I mean, let's be real. He's shooting 36.7% from the floor. I'm not going to overreact to that, along with 3+ turnovers per game. So I think Williams is I'd say a work in progress.
Right.
As the most overrated term in all of draft analysis is he's very raw, whatever that means, because it means he has talent, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. So I don't think that really matters, but he's talented, so maybe he can put together a good game for 40 minutes. But at the end of the day, I think USC is the better team. The fact that you have so many questionable people for Stanford right now, I think is also a huge red flag if you want to go to the window with the underdog. I'll go with USC. Am I going to play it personally? Probably not. I also like the over in this matchup. I know It has been under money. It's gone from 140.5 to it's gone from 140.5 to 137, mostly because of the injury news. Stanford's been an over machine over the last, I'd say, month.
7 of their last 8, yeah.
Yeah, 7 of the last 8. You're looking at USC 4 of the last 5. I understand that there are concerns about Stanford's health for some players, but with these trends and the fact that both of the games lately, including just the games that they've had against each other, I should say, have been pretty high scoring. I'll lean to the over. I just think that it's a little bit of an overreaction with all the injuries. I think that both teams should get up and down. I think you'll see a decent amount of points.
Okay. All right, good enough. Anything else?
For the most part, no. Of course, my Wisconsin Badgers are playing again, and I'll go out of my way not to watch them after they lost to Penn State over the weekend.
That'll teach them.
Yeah, that'll definitely teach them. But you have any thoughts on the Iowa-Michigan State game? Because I know money's coming to Michigan State because it's a must-win game, whatever that means for Michigan State, because that team is not very good. Iowa lost to Illinois in that very, very close game over the weekend, which I watched a decent amount of. I thought it was a great game. I can't go to the window of Michigan State here, I'll tell you that much, because I think Michigan State is not a tournament team. So I'll lean to Iowa, but I'm not going to play that. I don't know if you have a premium on that or if you want to talk about it.
I do. The 2 games you asked me about are 2 games I have premiums on. Congratulations. So,
well, I do my best, but I don't know if you have a side or a total.
I've got a side on that one. I don't really have a ton of thoughts on the total. It should be an interesting game, and I definitely have an angle on the side. So
I think it'll lean to the under. You have seen some line movement going from 156 to 154.5. Michigan State, people know that this team's bad. 3-11 to the under. This team has been a low-scoring, I can't say machine because they're not very good, but I think you get the gist there. And I think that if Michigan State wants to go up tempo against Iowa, good luck to you. That's all I'm saying. So I think Izzo and company should at least try to slow the pace of play, because we both know Iowa at home, when they get into transition, you might as well just start the buses. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is again a Michigan State team, like you said, it hit four in a row for the under, 5 of their last 6, while Iowa's hit 3 of their last 4 to the under. So
Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, all potentially not in March Madness. What a time! What a year! 2021.
KU could play themselves out too. I think they're a borderline tournament team right now, but
I personally disagree with you there. I think KU's safe, but
I don't. This team can lose. That KU team can lose to any team in the Big 12 with the exception.
I don't think KU's very good. I'm just saying that if you're talking about teams that are in dire situations here,
they're not. No, they're not. They're at a different level than Duke and Kentucky. I agree.
And Michigan State.
Oh, and Michigan State.
I mean, Kansas is still ranked, so they're going to make the tournament. It's just this team.
I'd say Kansas is a 3-2 favorite to make the tournament. I think they're a 60% tournament team right now.
I would put the line probably around 80.
Okay.
I think they're going to get in. I know that they've lost 4 of 5, and they're in a massive slump. Yep. Playing Kansas State also helps, so maybe they'll get back on track. But at the end of the day, I think this team will get in. Will it be a 5 or a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1? Maybe not, but I think they'll get in. So Michigan State, I don't think will, unless the committee pulls some strings, which of course is possible. Duke better not make the tournament. This Duke team is awful.
You can make the case. You can make the case. There's 6 better teams in the Big 12 than KU. And
I think
the seventh best team in the Big 12 may not make the tournament.
Well,
that's what I'm saying to you.
I understand what you mean. I mean, I'm assuming you'd put Oklahoma State ahead of Kansas because Oklahoma State actually beat Kansas head-to-head.
You have to right now. You know, we'll see how the season shakes out. And I've got KU in my play of the day tonight, but which is about a 95% fade of just a dreadful K-State team.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. Like I'm just saying right now they're in, but they could certainly with a couple more bad losses play themselves out of the tournament.
I think they'll play themselves onto the bubble, but I'm not going to go ahead and say that I think they're going to miss. I think that if you're looking based on, I'd say, security of making the tournament, out of those teams that we mentioned are the Blue Bloods.
Yeah.
You got Kansas is the most safe, followed by, I'd say, slightly Michigan State.
Oh, God.
Followed by Duke. Now, I'm saying slightly in between Michigan State and Duke. Kansas is ahead of both by a decent margin. But Michigan State, Duke, and then you have Kentucky who, I mean, to be honest, should just shut down the program for the year because they're not going to make the NIT. They're not going to make the CIT. They're not going to make the CBI. They should – I don't even know what they should do.
Well, they're not going to play in any of those. They could make the field, but they're not going to play in them. So
who?
Kentucky.
Well, you need a winning record in order to even partake. In the NIT, you do. So
no, I'm talking about the CTI or the CBI. They
I don't know if you need a 500 record for those.
I don't think you do if I recall right. So
not fully sure, but either way, Kentucky's a lost cause.
Yeah.
Duke, I don't know how you lose to Miami and stay alive. They were already on the bubble. I thought they were on the out looking in.
I don't even want to talk about that game. That's just stupid.
Which is bad. And then you have Michigan State who said COVID issues, a bunch of other stuff, but they're just not very good.
So. All right. So, as always, if you're looking for more information on these games or any other games going on today in America, make sure you stop by and check out winnersandwhiners.com. Deep dives into every game every single day. That's been the college show. Stick around. We're going to do our NBA game. Got a couple NBA games to take a look at. So, as always, we appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will see you on the NBA side. For myself, for Scott Reichel, for all of us over here at Winners and Winers, wishing you guys nothing but the best today. Hope every one of those tickets in your pocket turns into cash money back at the window. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time on Today in Sports Betting. Take care, everybody.